deep breaths, okay? Deep breaths.
Serial killers, cold, calculated, and unremorseful.
Proceedings are now
Putting
completed.
somebody who was raped to death.
But when justice finally catches up, even the most heartless criminals can't hide their fear. These are the courtroom moments where reactions are so shocking that you won't believe what happens next. Just before we dive in, if you enjoy our content, it would mean a huge amount if you can hit that like and subscribe button. But now let's jump into our first case. Aileen Wuornos,
Proceedings are now
Putting
completed.
somebody who was raped to death.
often labeled as America's first female serial killer, led a life of abuse and challenges. Born in 1956, she faced a scary childhood, abandonment, and severe mistreatment. By her early teens, Wuornos had turned to prostitution, a means of survival that would later intertwine with her violent crimes. Between 1989 and 1990, Wuornos embarked on a murderous spree across Florida, targeting men she claimed had solicited her services. Her modus operandi involved luring victims, murdering them, and then robbing them. In total, she confessed to killing 7 men, asserting that each act was in self-defense against sexual assault. The trial for the murder of Richard Mallory, her first known victim, commenced in January 1992. As the proceedings unfolded, the weight of the evidence against Wuornos became unstoppable. Witnesses, forensic findings, and her own inconsistent statements painted a damning picture. Upon the jury delivering a guilty verdict for first-degree murder, the courtroom atmosphere grew tense. Wuornos, who had maintained a composed demeanor throughout much of the trial, suddenly blew up. Her voice, filled with fury and desperation, echoed through the chamber as she shouted,
Appeal. Mr. Glazer, is that going to be handled by you
May
or the
your
public
wife and
defender?
kids
Your Honor,
get raped.
I would ask that you would
Right
appoint
in
the
the
public defender's
ass.
office.
Okay, I'll...
It was a moment that captured the profound disconnect between her proclaimed justification and the jury's perception of her actions. In the ongoing penalty phase, the prosecution sought the death penalty, emphasizing the heinous nature of her crimes. The defense presented psychological evaluations, revealing that Wuornos suffered from borderline personality disorder and had experienced a life filled with trauma and abuse. Despite these factors, the jury recommended the death sentence. On January 31, 1992, the judge agreed, and Wuornos was sentenced to death. Her reaction to the sentencing was a mixture of defiance and resignation. Aileen Wuornos' courtroom breakdown serves as a haunting reminder of the complex interplay between personal history and criminal behavior. On October 21, 2018, Tyrone Johnson called 911 from his Tampa apartment, claiming he had been attacked and had shot his girlfriend, Stephanie Willis, and her 10-year-old son, Ricky. He told the dispatcher, "I was being attacked."
Deep breaths, okay? Deep breaths.
During police questioning, Johnson alleged that an argument over changing the television channel hyped up when Stephanie insulted him about his deceased son, leading him to shoot her in anger. He claimed that Ricky was accidentally shot during the argument. However, the evidence contradicted his account. Investigators found shell casings and blood in Ricky's bedroom, indicating the boy had been shot while hiding under his bed. Prosecutors argued that Johnson had pursued and intentionally killed Ricky after murdering Stephanie.
Kim just said, like, because you were and I called him back and I said, come and get me.
In November 2021, a jury found Johnson guilty of first-degree murder for Ricky's death and second-degree murder for Stephanie's. During the sentencing phase, Johnson tearfully pleaded for mercy, stating, "I am truly remorseful and deeply sorry. I can't offer any apology enough to change any of this."
A recording of the police interview shows something else, though. Fox 13's Gloria Gomez shows us how investigators today handled it.
Tyrone Johnson cried hysterically during his interview with investigators.
Despite his emotional appeal, the jury recommended the death penalty for the murder of Ricky. On December 12, 2022, Judge Christopher Sabella imposed the death sentence. Johnson's tears and apologies could not change the outcome. the court held him accountable for the deliberate and brutal killings of Stephanie Willis and her young son, Ricky.
Wade Stephen Wilson, case number 19 CF 568.
In October 2019, Wade Stephen Wilson embarked on a violent spree in Cape Coral, Florida, resulting in the deaths of two women, Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz. Wilson, then 25, first met Melton at a local bar. After spending time together, he strangled her as she slept and stole her car. Shortly thereafter, he encountered Ruiz, lured her into the stolen vehicle under the pretense of needing directions, and brutally murdered her. Wilson later confessed these crimes to his biological father, stating he just wanted to do it.
He said that he pulled her out of the car and realized that she was still breathing.
During his trial in June 2024, Wilson's demeanor was notably smug and unremorseful. He often smirked and displayed a casual attitude, even as the prosecution detailed the heinous nature of his actions. The jury found him guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, among other charges.
But the defendant strangled her when she tried to exit. He then drove to an empty lot, strangling her into unconsciousness at least one additional time on the way there.
At the sentencing hearing on August 27, 2024, Judge Nicholas Thompson addressed the court, emphasizing the calculated and premeditated nature of Wilson's crimes. He stated, "The evidence showed both murders were heinous, atrocious, and cruel, and that the second murder was cold, calculated, and premeditated." But his disturbing behavior didn't end there. While awaiting trial in Lee County Jail, Wilson, along with another inmate, Joseph Katz, attempted to escape. Legal experts suggest that prosecutors will argue his attempted flight is evidence of guilt, while his defense team will likely fight to keep this information away from the jury.
A couple of Lee County inmates have new charges this morning. The sheriff's office says they tried to escape from the Lee County jail. Deputies say Wade Wilson and Joseph Katz, the two men you see right here, broke a window in their cell.
Judge Thompson sentenced Wilson to death for both murders. Wilson received the sentence with a stoic expression, maintaining the same indifferent demeanor he had displayed throughout the proceedings. Even after the arrest, he maintained the same behavior and unremorseful attitude.
Did you kill Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
In the quiet Riverview neighborhood of Florida, a horrifying tragedy unfolded on March 18, 2018. Ronnie O'Neill III brutally murdered his girlfriend, Kenyatta Barron, and their 9-year-old daughter, Ron Nevaeh O'Neill. He also attempted to kill their 8-year-old son, who miraculously survived and later testified against his father. What made this case even more shocking was O'Neill's decision to represent himself during the trial, leading to a courtroom spectacle that left many in disbelief. During the trial, O'Neill's behavior was strange and confrontational. He frequently raised his voice, presenting conspiracy theories and accusing prosecutors of fabricating evidence. Despite overwhelming evidence, including a 911 call where Barron pleaded for her life, O'Neill maintained his innocence regarding certain aspects of the crimes. He admitted, "I did kill Kenyatta Barron," but claimed the state's evidence was fabricated.
I am not sorry for something I didn't do, and I am not sorry for the things I did do.
In a shocking moment, he cross-examined his own son, asking, "Did I hurt you that night of this incident?" The boy replied, "Yes." And when asked how, he stated, "You stabbed me."
Did I hurt you that night of this incident?
Yes.
I did. And how did I hurt you?
You stabbed me.
The jury found O'Neill guilty of multiple charges, including 2 counts of first-degree murder. During sentencing, Judge Michelle Cisco expressed the profound impact of the case, stating, 19 years I've been at this job, this is the worst case I've ever seen.
19 years I've been at this job. I've seen human beings killed at the hands of others in every way imaginable. You name it, I've seen it. Shootings, stabbings, drownings, suffocatings, blown apart by cars, some DUI manslaughter cases. Horrible things. This is the worst case I have ever seen as far as the facts go.
O'Neill was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms, plus 60 years, ensuring he would spend the remainder of his life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Now that you have been found guilty of first-degree murder, we now go into penalty phase.
I'm seeking the death penalty. It's in my best interest, basically because it's a comfort. I'll be living a lot more comfortable than I would in the federal system, living on death row, believe it or not.
In December 2003, Tampa was shaken by the disappearances of Jason Galehouse and Michael Wachholtz, both 26 years old. Unbeknownst to the community, Stephen Lorenzo and his accomplice, Scott Schweikert, had lured these men from a local nightclub to Lorenzo's Seminole Heights residence. There, the victims were drugged, tortured, and murdered in a series of heinous acts that would haunt the city for decades.
After the body was distributed, and I did not dismember that body, and there's a good reason for that, and I can explain that to you. Very good reason.
For nearly 2 decades, the families of Galehouse and Wachholtz sought justice. Lorenzo was initially convicted in 2005 on federal charges related to the drugging and assault of multiple men, receiving a 200-year sentence. However, it wasn't until December 2022 that he confessed to the murders of Galehouse and Wachholtz, pleading guilty and expressing a desire for the death penalty. In a handwritten letter to the court, Lorenzo stated, "I'm seeking the death penalty. It's in my best interest, basically, because I'll be living a lot more comfortable than I would in the federal system living on death row."
We spent the morning in the courtroom where Stephen Lorenzo submitted a letter revealing some of those gruesome details about his role in the deaths of Jason Galehouse and Michael Wachholtz.
During the sentencing hearing on February 24, 2023, Lorenzo, representing himself, reiterated his wish for execution, citing personal comfort and privacy on death row as motivating factors. He remarked, "At my age, I want to be comfortable. I want my privacy."
So I'm asking you to give me the death sentence, because that'll be more comfortable for me to live out my lifetime. I know I can be on death row for about 10 or 15 years, which I think is crazy.
Judge Christopher Sabella, presiding over the case, acknowledged the prolonged anguish of the victims' families. He noted, "The thing that was consistent in their testimony was that they have been waiting 20 years for justice. Today, that long wait ends."
Ultimately, the judge says death is the punishment he deserves. The mothers of Galehouse and Wachholtz weren't there in person but tuned in remotely. Their 2 sons vanished from a nightclub in December of 2003. Lorenzo says he lured, tortured, and murdered the 2 men, haunting the LGBTQ community.
Despite Lorenzo's apparent eagerness for death, Judge Sabella emphasized that the sentence was a reflection of the gravity of his crimes, not the defendant's personal wishes. He pronounced, "I sentence you, Mr. Lorenzo, to death. That is the punishment that you deserve for these horrific crimes."
That translates to, "I sentence you, Mr. Lorenzo, to death. That is the punishment that you deserve for these horrific crimes."
Now, I want to hear from you. What case shocked you the most? What would you have done if you were the judge? Are there any other more shocking cases that are even worse than these, which we should cover next? Let me know in the comments below.